The new one, though, the Bishop Grady Lane. Y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN Report. So on Friday, I told y'all about the mass shooting that happened in Christchurch, New Zealand, which is actually New Zealand being a strip of land that's like southeast of Australia, but right outside of it. So in the city, there was a dude by the name of Grant N. Tarrant, a white dude who shot up 2 mosques with a semi-auto automatic rifle, and apparently there were 50 bodies caught. You know what I'm saying? As was tallied up, given an official death toll today, and at least 50 people injured. So this is a crazy situation where it's forcing like Jacinda Ardern, who's actually the Prime Minister of New Zealand, to take swift action on gun reform. She's actually talking about how in like 10 days they should see some policy. And a lot of people who are pro-gun reform worldwide are using this as like a means to like celebrate, say, see, we should do this, but I don't know if everybody's in the same situation. Nevertheless, Trump was confronted with the question of, is white supremacy on the rise? And he says no, but it's a fact, my G, it is, man. Green War graduate. The new world, though, the Bishop Grady Lane, y'all know what the fuck going on. So, in case y'all was wondering, well, how are we still in a national emergency? Has no one checked this motherfucker that's in the White House yet about this shit? Well, the answer is they tried, actually. The Congress actually came up with votes trying to overturn his national emergency declaration, that of Donald Trump, who put out a national emergency basically saying that, there's an invasion of immigrants coming from the southern border. But even during his own speech where he was announcing the national emergency, he said he didn't need to do that. That doesn't sound like a fucking emergency, but nevertheless, that's what we're dealing with. Nevertheless, when Congress actually did put it on paper and they overturned it, it came to the president, and he gave his first presidential veto. Presidents are entitled to that. If they feel strongly against something, they veto it unless it has 2/3 support of Congress, of the Senate actually, which it doesn't, and it probably won't. Green War graduation. The new world, though, the Bishop Grady Lane, y'all know what the fuck going on. Now, this is a first, actually. The United States is actually denying visas to anybody that's on the International Criminal Court that's coming to the U.S., basically investigating into possible war crimes by the United States over in Afghanistan. So Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced publicly that they're denying them visas. So the ICC is something that apparently most countries signed up for, but what they are finding out is, when you don't have any weapons, when you don't have any army, how can you enforce your will against other countries? You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck how many contracts are signed. And that's what the fuck is going on. The reality is, as far as the war in Afghanistan, especially when you have companies like Blackwater, all of the extraction of oil and things that were set up or whatever, and it can go even deeper into the documents that were released on WikiLeaks. It's definitely some international criminality here. Green War graduate. The new world, though, the Bishop Grady Lane, y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN Report. So, speaking of the International Criminal Court, as I did in my previous post, talking about Donald Trump, and talking about the United States or whatever, the Philippines is actually officially withdrew from the International Criminal Court. As I told you, it's made up of a bunch of countries or whatever who signed up to essentially democratize and protect their states or whatever, states from committing war crimes against other less powerful nations or whatever. And it's not really respected, but you see the Philippines actually pulled out of it because their president, Rodrigo Duterte, has actually been, genocide, you could even argue, definitely putting out extrajudicial killings against so-called drug dealers. There have been 5,000 extrajudicial, meaning police killing human citizens or whatever, since 2016. Green War graduation. For the new world, though, the Bishop Grady Lane, y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN Report. So last week, actually, the Upper Midwest saw what was called a bomb cyclone, where there was historic levels of rain and flooding, and compound that with the melting snow. There was just a lot of flooding in regions that caused certain states to actually issue a state of emergency, including Nebraska. Now, in total, there were actually 2 people that died. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, this weather shit is real, ain't nothing to fuck around with. If there's a state of emergency coming your way, you know what I'm saying? Do everything you need to do to protect yourself, your family, and, you know what I mean, if you still got energy left over, your community. You're there, Green Wall graduation. The New World Order, Bishop Grady, letting y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN report. So over in Southern Africa or whatever, you got the countries of Mozambique and Zimbabwe that actually from Thursday to Saturday had experienced a cyclone Idai, I-D-A-I, that actually claimed the lives of at least 120 people. They're still mounting up the body counts and assessing the damage. So actually the environment minister for I think Mozambique has actually said that that's the worst natural disaster that country has ever faced. So it's crazy to hear about cyclones. Like we really hear about them, but we just heard about that and one over in the U.S. In this past week. So shit getting real, man. Stay safe, man. Green Water graduates. The New World Order, Bishop Grady, letting y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN report. So over in Papua, Indonesia, it was actually landslides and flooding that actually claimed the lives of 77 people. That's 77 people dead off a storming that was happening, and landsliding and flooding, obviously. Now, also in Indonesia, but on the Lombok Islands, there were actually 2 people killed when a 5.5 magnitude earthquake triggered a landslide. So there was a lot of destruction there, you know what I'm saying? So just, I don't know, keep positive thoughts in the direction towards Indonesia, man, because, that's some ill shit. I'm sure they scared shitless because you can't protect yourself from Mother Nature for real. Like, you can't hide. You know what I mean? You can try your best, and that's what we need to do. We need to get our infrastructure straight from city to city, state to state, country to country, continent to continent, and really deal with this climate change shit, man. Stop fucking around. You know our motto, green war graduation. The New World Order, Bishop Grady, letting y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN report. So remember how I told y'all that in Israel, the Valid United Arab List, which is an alliance of Arab voting blocks, essentially, weren't allowed to vote or participate in the upcoming election this April for Parliament. Now, this ban was seen as nothing less than racist. I mean, with the only site being that we're not going to allow like people who support terrorism to be part of Parliament. But that's kind of always the rhetoric used against Palestinians out there in Israel. So that was whereas you have the Jewish Power Party, which actually has been linked to like right-wing extremism. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister over there, actually openly sided with this group or whatever, and they were allowed to run. Well, the tables have turned, and justice has seemingly prevailed, where the Arab lists are actually allowed to run, and the leader of the Jewish Power Group is not allowed to run. So, green war and graduate. The New World Order, Bishop Grady, letting y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN report. So over in Kentucky, Republican Governor Matt Bevin actually signed into law this past Friday the fetal heartbeat law, which basically says that if a fetus after 6 weeks of pregnancy it has a heartbeat, then you can no longer have an abortion. Now, 6 weeks, anybody who's been through a pregnancy knows that's wild early. I mean, you have people out here that are 6 weeks pregnant and don't even know. And now you're saying that they can't have an abortion. So, of course, the pro-choice people are up in arms or whatever, and actually a federal judge in Kentucky blocked the law temporarily. So it's going to be blocked for 2 weeks until further hearing. So we'll see how this pans out, man. It's definitely a women's rights issue, but it's also a societal issue. But I think all would be in agreement, most would, that 6 weeks is pretty ridiculous, unless you just want to get rid of abortion in general. So I don't know. What do you think? Green war graduation. The New World Order, Bishop Grady, letting y'all know what the fuck going on for this BFN report. So finally, I got some new shit for y'all. You know what I mean? Like something you never heard before. So Bernie Sanders' campaign is actually unionized. So the I forget the name of it. It's United Local Food and something Workers Local 400, something like that. One of them type of union names or whatever. But they're unionizing on his campaign staff. They feel like his last campaign they didn't handle sexual harassment complaints and unequal pay parity situations very well. So now they have the union behind them, so they're going to support Bernie Sanders, help him get this election, but they're going to make sure they get their equal pay. You know what I mean? So salute to all of them, man. You know what I mean? And especially the women involved. That's a win for them, and hopefully they help Bernie Sanders win. I mean, if not Bernie, somebody who's about with the shit, you feel me, and not with that other fuck shit that the current administration here now. Green Wall graduates